now have our guest with us, Clement Nwankwo. A crucial part of the democratic process the world over is election monitoring, which is geared towards exposing deliberate malpractice on the part of the political participants and their agents, as well as strengths and flaws in the system, with a view to ensure continuous improvement. In Nigeria, this role seems to have been redefined and suppressed at the same time by a combination of factors, including the win it all at all cost syndrome by politicians. In recent elections, there have been instances of election observers being consciously denied space to monitor the process, either by security agents or thugs working for politicians. Will these situations be allowed to play out this weekend in Edo State? Are there plans by civil society groups on ground in Edo State to deal with any eventualities in this direction? And what lessons could these groups have learned from the widespread disruption of the electoral process during the last general election? Well, joining us now from Benin, the capital of Edo State, to attend to these issues is Clement Nwankwo, a lawyer, director, Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, and convener, Civil Society Situation Room. Good morning, Clement Nwankwo, and thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you, Ruben. I am still making my way to Benin, so shortly, but we do have the Situation Room fully on ground in Benin. We will be deploying observers. Indeed, about 300 of our observers will be at different units across the state ahead of the elections. We will observe all events that have started since this week. We already have a contingent very active, moving around and meeting with different stakeholders. We will be at the peace accord signing this morning between the major political parties. We will also be observing the deployment and distribution of election materials, as well as actual deployment of staff for the elections, and will also be at every collation center at the elections in the Edo State. So the Situation Room is fully on ground and active with respect to the elections coming up on Saturday.
Well, I mean, you're indeed right. Civil society organizations have been on ground in Edo State for more than a week now, and I think even much earlier, because I recall that Yiaga published a preliminary report. But as the head of the Civil Society Situation Room, what are your preliminary observations, that is pre-election? What are the big issues that we need to worry about? And what's your assessment of the level of preparedness of various stakeholders, particularly with regard to security and the electoral process itself?
The Situation Room did meet with the Inspector General of Police just under 2 weeks ago in Abuja, Monday last week precisely. And we did have conversations around the role of security in the elections. We did get assurances from the Inspector General of Police about levels of deployment, but also concerns about partisanship and what the police is doing to address this. We spoke about fake security men, because always with elections, you do have the situation that fake policemen get involved in elections, or fake security personnel. This is understood very clearly by the Inspector General of Police and the police itself. And so they assure us that they have put in place very stringent measures to identify this when it occurs. We've also met with the chairman of INEC. We did indeed meet with the chairman of INEC on Friday, about 3-4 days ago, to discuss INEC's preparations. We spoke with the resident electoral commissioner in Edo State and did have a meeting with him in the Situation Room, where he explained all of the preparations that INEC has put in place, including training of staff, deployment of materials, control over polling units, and the several issues involved with preparations for the elections. We would say that we are satisfied with INEC's explanations, but again, as they say, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So we will get a sense when we get on ground what is going on. A major concern has been violence. The rhetorics of the candidates, especially the two major candidates in the APC and the PDP.
Hello, Clement, are you with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now, yes. There was a slight problem with the connection. We can hear you now.
Yes, but as I was saying, I think that everyone is concerned about the violence and rhetorics of the candidates. At this time, as we speak, reports from observers indicate, of course, that things have been calm in the last few days, and we are hoping that this remains the case. In the elections in 2016, I think that there was a concern about the elections. There was a concern about the rhetorics of the candidates as well. And interestingly, it was the same candidates, except that they were in reversed parties in the 2016 elections. So these are concerns that we all have ahead of the elections, and we hope things are in control.
Indeed, you're very correct. I mean, the election in 2016, despite having 18 political parties, became a two-horse race, and that's what we have on our hands again. We have 14 political parties in this elections and 14 candidates, but again, we have a two-horse race with the same candidate. Were you expecting that the stakes would have been a lot lower this time around, considering that they are the same candidate? What is responsible for this, predominantly high electoral temperature, if you like to say, in Edo State? I mean, these are the same people from 2016. Why are the stakes so high in Edo State?
I think that egos have gotten into these elections. Certainly, one factor plays in both of the candidates' camps, which is the ego of the predecessor to the incumbent, who has played a major role in the emergence of one of the candidates, and indeed in one of the other candidates moving to another political party. So I think there's a lot of ego issue, and I think ultimately that has led to the building of tension in both camps. My hope in listening to the candidates, and they have spoken quite recently in calm voices, urging their supporters to be calm. We're lucky that we do have a very well-respected monarch, the Oba of Benin, who has been quite firm in delivering the message of the need for peace, and has held meetings with the candidates. And again, all of the concerns raised by civil society, the National Peace Committee that is coordinating today the signing of the peace accord, all of this, I think, may have helped to douse, at least at this time, some of the high tension that was there. But again, we have a few more days to go, and then we have the elections on Saturday, and we will see how this plays out.
I want to get your read on, the logistical capabilities of the election umpire, that's INEC. I mean, what's your read as regards, logistics put in place? Because prior to this time, we always have challenges as regards moving sensitive materials and the like. What's your read with what you've seen on ground?
Well, this is one election, unlike the general election, which is a coverage of 36 states plus the FCT. This is one election in one state. It will be the third governorship elections after the general elections of 2019. And as you know, there was very strong criticisms of the governorship elections that happened after the 2019 general elections in Kogi and in Bayelsa. These elections were very, very strongly criticized by civil society, by observers. And we communicated to INEC the concerns, the lapses, and actually the failures in the conduct of that election, of both elections. Our hope is that INEC has taken lessons from that. They have assured us that all of the sensitive materials are on ground. They will begin to distribute the last set of materials just the day before the election, such that they arrive at the registration area centers and indeed go on to the polling units almost right on time. Of course, there are the concerns about COVID, and INEC would be applying some protocols that should guide these elections, including protection and making sure that voters are safe as they vote on the elections on Saturday. So I hope, and we will be watching for the first time, the COVID protocols taking place with the elections that come up on Saturday.
Well, Clement Nwankwo, let me ask you, yesterday, I mean, in the build-up to the elections in Edo this weekend and Ondo in October, the U.S. Department of State announced visa restrictions on some persons who were accused of having undermined democratic process in Kogi and Bayelsa states in November 2019, and also persons in this Edo and forthcoming Ondo elections who have been found culpable in the same regard. How significant do you think this is? And do you think that this move by the U.S. Department of State will have any effect whatsoever on the conduct of the political actors in Edo State and Ondo State?
Well, what it shows, of course, is the election is not just a Nigerian affair. The elections are an international affair. Nigeria is not an island. INEC has accredited Nigerian and international observers, and everyone would be looking at the elections with a view to determining what recommendations to make, what actions to take if those recommendations are not implemented. And so I believe and I expect that the international observers will again be present in Edo. They have been present in the country. They have been reading the reports that have been coming out from those who are organizing pre-election observation activities. So all of this informs the way that everyone reacts, whether it's Nigerian observers or international observers, and everyone tries to bring about some leverage to ensure that people respect democratic tenets. So my expectation is that if the actors, if the political parties, if the candidates know that there are consequences for actions and consequences for things that they do, that would in some ways create some restraints. This country has delayed so long in implementing the provisions of electoral acts that compel consequences for electoral misbehavior. And we have argued repeatedly about creating an electoral offenses commission that will be active in ensuring that when people violate electoral laws, that they are brought into account. And this hasn't happened. Presently, there's a bill in the National Assembly, in addition, of course, to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. There is a bill in the National Assembly on the Electoral Offenses Commission, and our hope is that the National Assembly will take this very seriously. We know that the committees of the National Assembly on Electoral Matters have been in Edo. We hope they are not just there for politics and campaign for their candidates of choice, but also understanding what is going on in Edo in order to ensure that when they come back to the National Assembly, they can respond to the demand for reforms in the electoral system, which law requires to put in place, and how this should be done, and how quickly this should be done before the next elections in 2023.
Mr. Nwankwo, we've come a long way 4 years after the elections in Edo State were contentiously suspended for almost 2 weeks in 2016. And in your election observation report for 2016, you said, while the process and conduct of the elections went smoothly, a major weak link in the conduct of elections in Nigeria again manifested: the collation of results. This time around, we are seeing INEC, bring up some innovation, including the Z-Pad, that would help electronically to accredit, although they said they've suspended that aspect. They say it will also help in sending real-time results to INEC portals. Are you reassured that your observation in 2016 has been taken care of now?
We're concerned that the Z-Pad is not going to be publicly available. The assurance given by INEC was that this was going to be the case. And then suddenly INEC has said that this will still be a tool in its internal conduct of the elections. Now, I think that the essence of elections and the essence of making information publicly available is to promote transparency. While ZPAD, the ZPAD has been used for a very long time within INEC circles, but not publicly available. And I think that every effort to make sure that big elections like this, even the national elections, the general elections, begin to be advantaged or begin to benefit from the advantage of technology is very important and helps to build population confidence in the electoral process. So I would say, quite frankly, that it would be helpful for our electoral process that technology that makes elections to be transparent, open to public viewing, open to public access, and open to public observation. And I think that INEC needs to move very strongly in this direction to build confidence in the electoral process.
I mean, so I just want to have a follow-up on the question as regards ZPA, because there's even now a trend where per polling units, people are already posting the results online to various platforms, and that has been very, very contentious. You know, so what's your take on that process itself? And since INEC has pulled that, anyway, you've registered your disappointment as regards this, but what would you advise INEC to do better as regards this? And secondly, in all of this conversation, I don't hear a lot of people say, okay, we are doing more work on sampling what are the thoughts of an average Edo voter. I have not heard one statistical analysis that can show the most pertinent issue for the current Edo voter now. We've done statistical analysis on security, on crises that might emerge and things like that, but I have not heard analysis on the mindset of an average Edo voter. Like if I ask you now, what is the number one, question on the mind of an average Edo voter? What area does it want government to focus on? We don't know. How can civil society come in as regards more targeted analysis at the voter?
Thank you. I think that's a very key thing. We do have a pre-election, election report, and I wish I had some way of putting this across to you, that does indeed look at some of the issues around this election. And some of the issues include the fact that very little issues are being put out and put forward by the candidates for the election. In Nigeria, it's a challenge that the achievement of issue-based campaign remains almost a mirage, and citizens are not able to listen to candidates campaigning and get a sense of what it is they are promising to do and holding them to account with respect to this. Yes, one of the candidates indeed has put out what he calls a simple agenda, and of course the incumbent is talking about consolidating on some of the work that he has done. But in reality, there must be some way of capturing what is it that affects the common person, the ordinary citizen of Edo, who is not interested in even the divisions and the partisanship of politics, but in development, in improving their conditions. And I think that that's something that we need to look at. And I agree with you, not enough analysis of the issues, and I think it's a challenge for us in civil society to do a lot more of that. But I also go back to your question about publishing results of polling units. I think there's a bit of confusion around. It is within legal limits to publish results of polling units, and that's why we encourage people to stay at the polling units, watch the votes being counted at the polling units, put out the results, and every citizen is perfectly within their rights to publish the results of the polling units in which they voted. Now, what is illegal is beginning to compile results from around different polling units and around different collation centers and announcing who has won. But I think certainly that voters have a responsibility, not just a right, a responsibility to publish results from polling units. We must also blame the political parties because most times, and we have said it repeatedly, the weakest point in the electoral process is collation. Now, if you're a political party, a serious political party running elections, you should be able to have agents at every polling unit. You shouldn't necessarily wait for INEC to show you results on the Z-pad. You should, as a political party, have your own Z-pad and be able to state from reports you are getting from your agents at different polling units, you can anticipate how the election results would be. And for us observers, it's a little bit difficult because we may not be able to engage in exit polls and the rest of that because it's a little bit complicated here. But at least the political parties themselves should get results from every polling unit where they have their agents, get verified results, and be able to compute this even before INEC is able to announce its own results. And based on that evidence, they can make a decision how they want to proceed with respect to challenging, if they feel a false result has been announced, challenging this.
Well, thank you very much, Clement Nwankwo. We look forward to having another conversation with you after the Edo elections, and we hope that you will oblige us when we come asking for your time. Thank you very much indeed.